Hey, how's it going? Ryan Dieger here, and this is Learn, Design, and Code. Purpose of this channel and series is to really build your design skills and coding skills just by doing copy work. And basically what that is just taking an existing design and replicating it. So whether that's something like a Photoshop or illustration, or if we're talking about a website or code, it's just the process of replicating that design, whether in Photoshop or by actually coding it. And the purpose of this is really to just build your kind of design skills and build your kind of design awareness. Often when you're first starting out learning something, it can be a little hard to come up with ideas and also be able to implement those ideas. So I think rather than kind of beating yourself up trying to come up with completely original ideas, I think you're far better off replicating great designs and learning from kind of the people people that have kind of come before you. So today we're just going to get right into it. And what I want to focus on with this is today we're actually going to do we're going to code, and rather than code up an entire website or code up a huge template, I think it's more effective to kind of focus on specific elements of a design. In this case, I've got Webflow's website pulled up here on the right. Webflow, if you haven't heard of it, it's basically a website builder, but we're not going to be using that. We're actually going to be coding here. But I wanted to just focus on a very simple part of the website. They've got a lot of kind of complex things happening here and complex design, but we're going to start simple and focus on the footer, which is a very common element that's on a lot of sites. So what we're going to be using today is CodePen. CodePen's super sweet for creating really quick kind of examples and prototypes. And we're also going to be using a framework called Tailwind CSS, which is sort of like a Bootstrap, but rather than it's got a bunch of classes and things that you can use, but it's a utility based framework. So there's not really a sense of using these pre-built components like Bootstrap, but they've got a bunch of handy little utility classes for things like spacing, fonts, and just really helps you get kind of up and running and designing in the browser rather than having to write out all this CSS yourself. So I'm just gonna close my thing here, get rid of the webcam, and we'll get right to it. So Tailwinds, you can actually just like link to it by dropping in a link to a unpackage site, and you can start using Tailwind without having to add CSS files into your project. I'm gonna close this real quick. And whenever you're in CodePen, make sure that you save your save right off the bat. If you don't, and the page happens to close, your work won't be saved. But if you save once, it's gonna constantly kind of auto save as you're going, so then you don't have to worry about it again. So first things first here, let's kind of see how this looks when let's go into our developer tools, go to responsive design mode, and let's see how this looks on the on mobile. Because the thing with Tailwinds is that it is a mobile or kind of mobile first framework. So let's create a container, and what I also like to do with CSS here is create a debug class. And what this is going to do is add a red outline to any element that is on my page. So if I set some padding here, I guess we'll add some content first. Add some margin. So as you can see, this debug class adds this red outline to our box, which is really handy because if you turn this class off, you can see it's a little hard when you're just dealing with pure white space to kind of tell where sort of the borders of things are. So again, this debug class will help us see, kind of where we are and how, the edges of this container. So again, Tailwinds has this, these are all utilities that they have here. So container will basically give you, a max width, kind of class that you can use, and that it will always, it'll always kind of resize, automatically as your, viewport kind of gets smaller. So you never have to worry about, content, kind of overflowing out of that. And then they also have a class that will let you automatically center this container within the viewport. So again, as we make our viewport smaller here, you can see this this debug class and this container are shrinking, and it's going to resize to the, always going to fit to the center of the viewport. So it's pretty handy. All right, let's just kind of start by, I guess, replicating. Let's start by replicating the colors here. So again, they've got a utility class for colors. The flow for the, I guess, syntax for that class is bg-color- and then sort of like an intensity value here. So as you can see, I've got 800 or 900, which is quite dark. And then as I go down to something like 400 or even 300, you can see that we're getting kind of lighter here. And they've got it for most of your kind of primary colors. So red, blue, indigo, purple, pretty sweet. So let's go something a little darker now, because that's kind of what we're working with over here. Let's go to 800. And for now, let's also just set, they've got a utility class for setting your font color. You just do text dash the color. In this case, we're just going to do white to get started here. And I'm going to turn off this debug because I kind of know where what I'm working with here. So let's also start to kind of break down what we're kind of working with here. So as you can see on the mobile view, we've got kind of these two columns here of just a huge kind of big list here, and then at the end we also have another section here, another set of columns, one for another set of links, and then one for the social. And then as we drag this out, eventually we're going to get to a four column layout. Let's kind of see if it goes anything beyond. So pretty much just jumping straight to two and four column layout. All right. So let's start making our columns here. So again, Tailwinds has a utility class for FlexBox, which is very handy for creating these, makes it really easy to create these columns here. So we're going to use that. just want to see how they put these, what they used here for. So it's just H5s and then a link. All right. All right, so let's just kind of get our layout here a little bit. We'll get some content in here. We won't do everything. And you can use something, you can use Emmet in CodePen, which is a really easy way to create multiple elements. Very quickly, you can do, so if you want to make 3 H1 elements, you can do H1 times 3, hit tab, and you'll get 3 H1 elements. So that's how you can quickly create kind of these repeating elements. You can also do it with classes. So I'm gonna, because we got 4 columns here, I'm gonna do .flex1 times 2, and that gives me two additional divs with the class of flex1. So pretty handy. All right. Again, we'll just add 2. We'll see if we can tidy this up a little bit. Since we're mainly working in the HTML here, we'll kind of expand that out. All right, and now we've got some icons here. So what we can actually do is just go to Font Awesome. They've got a free package for adding icons to your site. This is a really easy, quick, easy way to add some icons, again, without needing to download or kind of add, add anything. So we got, we'll search. And their site is having some trouble here. So we got the usual suspects, YouTube, all your social icons. And I always kind of forget the formatting for adding these in here, but you do it once and I can kind of easily just copy these a few times. And then to add in these other ones, it's as simple as basically typing in FA dash and the icon. All right, so right now, by default, let's just do a debug here to kind of see we're all filled up there. Let's do debug to see where these kind of. So real quick on how these utility classes work. So Flex is going to add FlexBox to this div here, and by default, FlexBox is going to lay out all these. When you have it set on a parent element, so in this case, the parent is this div here, and then it's this parent element is wrapping all of these individual, all these divs with Flex1. So because we have 4 here, what FlexBox is going to do is lay out, by default, it lays out all the child elements in a row, and it doesn't wrap them. It's going to try and squish for each one of these Flex1 divs. It's going to try and squish it all into one row by default. Now we can set it to wrap, but in this case, we actually don't want to do that. We want 4 columns, so we're gonna leave that. But what we do need here is, right now you can see that these A tags, the link or href tags, are not wrapping onto the next line. As we're seeing here, we've got kind of 4 columns here, but they're being squished. If I add the debug class to this, I can see that this is an inline element. So what that means is that it's not going to take up an entire, basically an entire block. It's only going to be as wide sort of as this element is. So how can we do that? There's a couple options here. We can also set, even though these, where we have Flex1, these are set to, even though these are child items, we can actually set these to being Flex parent as well. And then what we can do is set that to Flex call. And what that's going to do is set this, so now we've got this Flex here, so that means that this is the parent, and now these are now the child items of this Flex container. And so again, by default, it sets those to a row, but what we can do is set this FlexBox to a column layout, and that's going to push everything down into a column here. So let's go and do that to the rest of these. I'll have to add Flex as well. And so this is really like the power of these utility classes, is that I haven't had to write any really any CSS, and I've got these handy classes here that I can just quickly use and start designing the layout here. All right, so we're getting kind of close, but right now, I'd say the big thing that we're missing here is that all these elements are, we've got, so let's kind of break down here some of the design elements here. So right now everything's the same color, and everything's kind of the, what are some of the things that makes this design stand out, or what are some of the choices that were made here. So we can tell that these are headings, because these are not the same color, even though they appear to be the same font size, and the same font weight and everything. But how you can tell again that these are sort of these titles or headers is that these are white by default. And there's a couple things with the links here. While the links below are darker gray. And then how you can kind of tell that these are links, what they've done is you've got a little cursor, this hand icon over the element, and then these also change color. So again, this kind of indicates, there's a level of interaction here. And again, it looks like the spacing is actually pretty consistent between all of these elements, even the header. But again, this is separated just by the color alone. So what we can do here is to make this easier, just so we don't have to rather than setting text, rather than setting the text on all of these, let's see what happens here. My thought is that if we wrap these in a div, so what we're actually going to do is, just to make this easier, we're going to set the we're going to make our links the flex column, and we're going to wrap them in a div so we can style them all at once. Let's do... So again, we could make the color of this match exactly, but and just for quick kind of prototype sake, we're just going to do it just using these existing color classes that Tailwind gives us. So let's go and change this all out. All right, so we've got our kind of got our layout here, and we can also fix up the padding. I guess we'll do margin top. The one thing that's a little weird is that these are not lining up quite the same. So now this is where I'm going to actually take a look and see what they, how they did this. So I'm just trying to figure out how to get these to actually line up as I should here and see kind of what they did. So it looks like all the So it could have to do with the font size. But let's leave it for now, and we'll move on to something else here. So the other thing here too is that this appears to be, we can tell if there's a container here. Definitely appears to be, we can see kind of some alignment happening here along the left side of the page, and also this would appear to be at the edge, kind of push the edge as well. So let's see what they... So we kind of got some sizing going on here. So now we need this to actually wrap onto our next. When these get small enough, they should wrap onto the next line. So what we're going to do is turn on Flex Wrap.